Hi, Tara.
Yeah, me, Kathy?
I hear you, but I don't see you. Now I do, yes. I see your ceiling light too. You might want to just put your phone more on your face.
For the town of Quispamsis this evening, April 21st. Thank you for joining us this evening. I will call now for the approval of the agenda.
So moved, Your Worship.
It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Hara. On the question, please vote now.
Councillor Olson?
We're just waiting for Councillor Olson. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Item 2. Mayor's comments. I do have a mayor's comment this evening. If you please bear with me. Lisa Kirsten McCauley was a mother, daughter, sister, teacher, and friend. A former resident of Quispamsis, she was one of the victims of the shooting in Nova Scotia this weekend. My heart aches for her father, John, and other members of Lisa's family, and everyone else who is grieving the loss of loved ones. Friends and colleagues from this senseless tragedy. This is the worst mass shooting in Canadian history, and it has the profound effect across this country. We will do whatever we can to support Lisa's family as we move forward as a community. Flags at all municipal facilities in Quispamsis have been lowered to half-mast in memory of Lisa McCauley, RCMP Constable Heidi Stevenson, and the other victims of this heinous criminal act. I also want to let you know that I did reach out and I called the Kirsten family and wish them our condolences from myself and the town of Quispamsis, and then anything that we could possibly do to help, we are there for them. Also at this time, I would ask for a moment of silence in memory of all of those who were killed this weekend in Nova Scotia. Thank you. Moment of reflection. Councillor Luck, would you do the moment of reflection, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. We would like to take a moment to pause and remind ourselves of the important work we have before us tonight. May we make good decisions without prejudice or bias, and always in the best interest of our community, which we are here to serve.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Item 4, disclosure of interest. Not hearing any. Item 5, presentations. There's no presentations this evening. Item 6, public hearings. There's no public hearings this evening as well. Item 7, previous minutes of the previous meeting.
April 7th, 2020 regular meeting.
Move to accept meetings as presented.
Second, Your Worship, Councillor Ryu.
It's been moved by Deputy Mayor O'Hara, seconded by Councillor Ryu. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Item 8, unfinished business, 8A.
Means Cove Beach House renovation update.
Thank you. We have an update here on the Means Cove Beach House final design. Ms. DeVille, do you have anything you would like to say first as we move forward?
I'd actually like to turn that over to the Director of Community Services.
Okay, thank you. Director of Community Services, Ms. Burton-Dixon, please.
Thank you, Your Worship and Ms. DeVille. Included in your package are the most recent drawings. We mentioned when we were meeting in January at the beach house that we would loop back with council and provide you with an update. Our architect and his team have taken the feedback from that meeting from council and from the public and from staff and are working on the final schematic design. So the designs that you have in front of you are at 80%. There's still work being done. They're not final. So we're still in the planning stages. We have plans for the tender to be put out for publication in the 1st of May and closing at the end of May, and hopeful that construction will start in June and that we will be able to finish the project before the new year or early into the new year. So
Thank you very. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just didn't want, if you can speak a little bit further on, or I can answer questions, whichever you prefer.
Thank you very much for the update. I will open it up maybe for any questions and comments from council and probably direct them to you. I can't see everybody on my screen, so if you could just let me know if you'd like to speak.
Councillor Olson.
Councillor Olson, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I like what I see. I've got a couple of comments on the basement layout. And I'm just looking at if everyone's got that in front of them right now. The washrooms are across quite a distance from the change rooms, and the two large open spaces seem to be sort of locked into maybe unusable space right now. They're just sort of like common areas. I think it would be a little bit more productive, if you want, or a little bit more user friendly, if the change rooms and lifeguard storage, all that stuff, slid over to the left-hand side beside the washrooms, and then the larger areas be joined to the other open space in the basement, because we had talked about utilizing the open space in the basement for possible meeting rooms or other uses. But right now it seems to be chopped up a little bit, and in my opinion, and but I'm interested in what other people's feedback might be. But that's just a thought that the change rooms and lifeguard space and office and all that stuff, if it was moved over adjacent to the common wall of the washrooms, and everything that's active right now is all over and centralized in that one location. And then the new basement and the future space and the existing basement are all combined into one large open area that could be subdivided at some time in the future for meeting rooms or other uses. Just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Ms. Burton-Dixon, would you like to comment on this?
Your Worship, in order to minimize our costs, we are using the existing plumbing. So the washrooms where they're located now are where the washrooms are located in the building. So that's where we're utilizing that space and the plumbing and that's already in place. It really just to mitigate cost.
Okay.
Your Worship, I wasn't suggesting moving the toilets part. I was suggesting moving the change rooms, which do not have plumbing and that associated with it. Move the change rooms over to the left, adjacent, using a common wall of the washrooms and future washroom area. And then those two large open spaces would then be combined to the right where the new basement is. It's just open areas, that was all.
Yeah, I see where you're saying. Ms. Burton-Dixon?
Thank you. I have to discuss that with the architect at this point and see what we have for the weight-bearing walls. And I'm not sure if it's just as easy as flipping them over. Again, given that we're at 80% and they're in their current location due to perhaps wall structures and such, I'd have to check with the architect to see if that would be possible without increasing our expenses too much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Luck, I did see your finger up.
This is something that perhaps can be passed on to the architect. I'm looking at the basement bathrooms, and I'm trying to figure out whether or not if one person goes in there at a time or two. Like there's a vestibule of nothing, and then you go into a bathroom which looks like two people can be in there at the same time. If they are, the wheelchair accessible one is right in front of the sink. The door opens up to the sink. So if someone's standing there washing their hands, they're going to be in for a surprise when that door opens. And secondly, the only spot in that bathroom to put a hand dryer is on the left wall in one and the right wall in the other. And again, you're opening a door up on that person. So for the life of me, I can't figure out that design at all. And maybe just pass it on to them. I don't know if that's finalized or what their plan or the idea is there, but to me, that looks like we should get it addressed rather quickly.
Ms. Burton-Dixon, did you want to just take these notes, or did you have a comment on that as well? I do see what Councillor Luck is saying there.
I'll take notes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Luck. Does anyone have anything else?
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. I had identified the same thing as Councillor Olson regarding the location of the toilets and the location of the change rooms. I think that it would be important to have a washroom within the change room area. So whether it is or is not easy enough to flip the change rooms over to the washroom area, I'm certainly not a designer and I don't know that. However, I know coming out of swimming and getting changed and so on, I would imagine that people would like to use a washroom. The other thing I wanted to ask about was the depth of the patio from the east side. And then I know that around the front, which would be the, I guess the northwest side, is that patio 5 feet deep? I couldn't really tell on my drawings, but is it more shallow than it is out front? I guess is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Looks like 10 feet I have, but Ms. Burton-Dixon?
It looks like 10 feet on my diagram as well. Just trying to have a look at that, but again, I can.
That's
make
what
a
I
note.
see there. I just see the 10 feet from the building out.
I see the same thing.
And that is for the main part of the deck that's overlooking the river, or is it also along the side, along the beach side? It just looked more narrow along the beach side than it did along the river side. So certainly overlooking the river, it looked like it was exceptionally wide, which is great, but I wasn't so sure about the side facing where people would actually come to the beach.
From what I can see, the diagram looks like it's 5 feet on when you look at the right-hand side, and then 10 at the front. Right. Be correct on that.
Yeah. And I guess the point being is that I know that this is going to be partly our warming facility in the event of a catastrophic occurrence, that will be equipped with the proper generator and so forth, and that it will be a destination area for weddings and anniversaries and those kinds of celebrations. And just want to make sure that when we do it, that we do get it right the first time. And that's what I noticed, Your Worship, was along the side that would be facing the beach where people would actually sit out at the beach. That looks to me to be 5 feet wide, which I don't know if that's quite wide enough. I know that the front is 10 feet, but I just look at my own deck and knowing the crowds of people that one might invite or whatever, and you want to make sure that since we are looking at the interior and the exterior as hosting people, that we want to make sure that it's wide enough. Thank you.
I agree with you, Deputy Mayor, on that side as well to the beach. 5 feet, I don't think, personally, I don't think is wide enough, but especially when you have people passing each other to go to the other side. But
Your Worship?
maybe we can just take those. Councillor Ryu?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I have somewhat the same concerns that the Deputy Mayor has. As you know, my concern from the original design and the original ideas of it was to make it larger, to have a larger capacity. I was excited when I first saw this with regards to that it would have the possibility of outdoor seating, and I'm certainly hoping that, and I think I'm implying what the deputy is suggesting, that they can have seating with umbrellas and chairs and so on, at least on the river side. Now, the side that faces the playground right now, it may or may not be able to be larger. I would like to see it also, because hoping that during our summer months or nice fall times when people have a function, that they could increase the capacity by utilizing the outside and having, as I say, tables, umbrellas, and this sort of thing. So I guess my point is, I hope the design allows for umbrella seating, comfortable seating, chairs maybe up against the wall and so on all sides, that it is possible. So I guess I'm just reiterating some of the comments that with regards to the decking size that the deputy had, because my point was that I would have liked to have the whole building bigger, but if we can utilize an outside space, the deck space, to add an increase for people's capacity for the function, that would somewhat satisfy me. So I'm hoping that that our comments will be well taken by with maybe the remaining 20% design can make sure those are in there. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Rio. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is actually not even on the drawings here. My question is regarding to the berm that we built, because I believe originally we were going to do a berm that had retractable door or gate, as an example. I believe we're not doing that anymore. So I just want to know if that is still the case, or we're going to leave it as a solid berm. And if so, I'm guessing we'd have a significant savings from not having that retractable gate. Is what are the changes we're making to the berm if we're not doing that? I'm just trying to find out if that's still our path forward for the berm or not. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Ms. Burton-Dixon.
Your Worship, we haven't determined what we're going to do with the berm at this point. We wanted to wait until the spring freshet came and left so we could see the impact on the structure. Right now it's rock, and there was plans for the sluice gates and for it to be grass, but we want to see what that looks like. And then we've talked about putting a trail across the top, because that seems to be organically what people want to do, is cross the top with the trail, taking pictures and what have you. So we're just waiting for the freshet to end, and then we will be having those conversations.
Thank you for that. Anyone have anything further? Okay, there is a resolution here that we receive and file this update with the comments that were added here this evening. Somebody want to make that motion?
I would move that, Your Worship. Sorry, the deputy mayor said no.
Councillor Olson has moved that. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor O'Hara. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 6-1. I do not have the 1. Would you like that recorded?
That's fine.
Ms. McGinnis, do you have the recording?
Councillor Luck is named.
Okay. Okay, thank you. 6-1. 8B, Queensbury Drive. Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Your Worship. As you know, we've been discussing this one for a while, and we have a resolution, or we have some recommendations from the Director of Engineering, which I'll have some questions on later. We've been talking about the street now, well, since I've been here, so since 2012. We have done a lot of changes. We went from 50 down to 40. we installed the speed signs. We did the temporary speed bumps. We're going through the phase 1, phase 2. And I'm interested in hearing the Director of Engineering's recommendations for the traffic calming. And I guess at the end, from what I understand, we will have all the residents on that street vote this November to what it is. I know reading the recommendations that stop signs are not in the recommendation, but I do think that whatever the final decision is, it'll be up to the residents. But I think they have to be permanent ways to slow it down, whether it's permanent stop signs, permanent speed bumps, or permanent narrowing. Having it just half the year and half the year not having it. I live right behind Queensbury, and I can hear the cars going up and down there at night. I see a lot of the things that happen there. So I know we keep saying that it's up to the people. I get it. I would really wish that the province or whoever would allow us to have photo radar. You stick it down there, you take a picture of the car, the people get a ticket. I lived in Calgary 20 years ago and they had it back then. I don't know why we don't do it here. We can't have the police there all the time, but if it is a group of 5 or 20 or 30 people doing it, a few $200-300 fines will slow them down. But anyways, I'm interested to hear in the Director of Engineering, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. I will turn it over now to the Director of Engineering and Works, Mr. Loge.
Thank you, Your Worship. The package that we have before us today, what we're dealing with is implementing a traffic calming policy that we're trying to make consistent across the community so that we can have, just as Councillor Miller mentioned, a permanent solution. So the proposals that we tried last summer, the traffic humps, were those temporary ones. This summer, we're going to be using variations on whether it's road delineators, curbing, decorative planters, and narrowing the roads at specific locations. With the ultimate goal, yes, is when we have the public hearing in November, ultimately the town will decide, because it's budget limitations and how we want to set a standard for the rest of the community. So the input is from the residents, the final say rest was council, but it is intended to be permanent fixtures that will be implemented at that stage. In my report, you can see where we're recommending traffic calming measures because they're self-policing. A stop sign is only good if a police officer is there to stop, fine a person, as Councilor Miller says, if there's radar enforced photos or stop sign enforced photos, that you can actually implement that physically. With self monitoring or self-controlling, whether it's narrowings, humps, the residents get used to driving more slowly. So that's the approach we want to take, and it ultimately is consistent with our traffic calming policy that we have for the community. We took another minor collector road, and when I say minor collector, that's a road in a subdivision that is used to access the rest of the subdivision. Gondola Boulevard. The similar thing that council the day we said the demand from the residents of that location was narrowing the road down a little bit to make space for public access. In this particular location, it's vehicle speed. That's the main concern. And we think that with the measures that we're introducing this summer, we'll have a real good feel for what is preferred. I've sent my report out and email to a couple of residents already, and they actually, even before they're down, are very anxious to see what these road narrowings will be like, because it does two things. It reclaims part of the road right away for pedestrians. It's a little bit more visually pleasing. It's a little more less intrusive to the vehicles with the humps and things like that. And the other thing is we can actually introduce these. It doesn't have to be at an intersection. It can be mid-block, partway through, so we can actually put it where the trouble areas are. So that's the approach that we're taking for this summer. We had a discussion with the work superintendent today and my engineering staff today. We're preparing design drawings based on what we had last year, where we had the humps. We're going to then compare some locations for the narrowings. We're going to talk to the public works group. What do they have in stock for delineators? And then we'll be placing an order for that to bring that into place. Council remembers we've got about $15,000 in the budget for local improvements for traffic calming. And this is an area where we see most of that area being spent in this particular street. So that's the approach that we're looking to take. Our goal is to, like I said, stay consistent with the traffic calming policy, stay consistent with the budget allocations that we have, and try to do something that is a little more self-policing without having to have, a radar police there every, 24/7, because, ultimately, and it is all up to the residents themselves. And if we can get them into the habit of driving in a certain manner, that's going to benefit the residents as a whole. So I can take questions or specific questions if council has anything of that nature.
Thank you, Mr. Loge, for that. Does anyone have anything? Councillor Luck, I do see your hand. Go ahead.
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Gary, for that rundown. I guess November is quite a ways off, and I know that we're going to have the installation of what you're suggesting hopefully soon, and we'll see what happens through the summer months. I guess just to expand on this and to go along with what our town, what the future holds, we've had some emails back and forth from some community members talking about the increased number of people on the streets and whatnot. And I guess my question is, as we look at these measures to stop cars or to slow cars down, what else can we do? And I think just, again, visionary, to think about the residents that are walking these streets. I actually ran the trail this morning, the trail in behind the French school, and came up through Queensbury, and it's pretty tight when you have people on both sides of the roads. And I know that there's been often times complaints about not only the speed, but then the individuals and the kids that are getting off the school buses and whatnot. And I know that everyone's got to slow down, but what are we thinking about for the future as far as, I guess, street widths or not getting to the sidewalks? Because I understand that, and I bought into the whole let's not get into the infrastructure of sidewalks, but I do like what we did, in a couple of new locations with the kind of paved areas off to the side of the street. And is that something that we can look at not only in the future, but perhaps for this particular area?
Mr. Loge, you want to comment?
Your Worship, yeah, and Councillor Luck brings up a good point. If you recall, a couple of meetings ago, we had an award of an RFP for development standards and guidelines. One of the things that we want to look at is do we change the development standards for streets being constructed in the town in the future to avoid that long thoroughfare or those areas that encourage that higher rate of speed? So that is a discussion that we want to have. Ultimately, that is one thing we want to do. What we also want to do this summer is look at the narrowings that we have and that we're going to be putting in place, see what kind of space it creates for pedestrians for that safe area. And if that's the case, then we can look at introducing it relatively inexpensively in different locations, whether it's planters or curbing or temporarily some of those the flat delineators that you see on the side of the highway sometimes, so that there's a visual break that'll give that sense of security. We've all see the traffic counts, and we see that from 7:30 till 9 o'clock is the highest speed, and then basically from 9 until 3:30 you essentially can lay down in the middle of pretty much any street in the town and nobody's going to be driving over you. And if we want to expand on that and say, all right, if we're willing to, I'll say inconvenience, but if we're willing to slow down traffic during the rush hours and give them a narrower road with areas that they actually have to pay attention, take, alternate, somebody can go first, then the opposing traffic would wait and go, so that they have to slow themselves down, exercise a little bit of courtesy when they're driving. If that's the model that we want to go forward with, then we can take that in all these trouble locations, then use that to go forward to do that. And this is what we're kind of anxious. We're excited to see what the road narrowings will do on Queensbury, because to me, I've seen it used in Quebec, in a lot of the suburbs outside of Montreal, and in Ontario. For some of my colleagues, they're having very good success with those types of, and it actually, you'll see a lot of streets this is standard construction now. They built them this way when they come in. So this is what we're looking forward to, see how this works and if we can do that. But you're correct, Councillor Luck. It's an example that we can go forward with and use it for future considerations.
Thank you, Mr. Loge. Anything else from anyone?
Deputy Mayor?
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. And this is directed to Mr. Loge. When I look at new streets being built, and I think you talked about that, as far as development standards are concerned, I believe in moving forward that this council should enact a bylaw or some sort of decree with new developers that roads must have calming devices built into them. Because quite honestly, I don't think that you'll go anywhere in New Brunswick with people that are as astute in knowing calming devices as well as our staff know, as well as your staff know, Mr. Loge, because this has been an issue for many, many years. And I think in moving forward, we need to expect this of the developers, because right now what we see with each new development is a runway of just a clear sheet of asphalt for people to speed up and down. And I live in a community in a subdivision with many teenagers and many young adults. I mean, people are up and down pretty much from 7 o'clock in the morning till midnight or even after. So I would say that even asking, when we look at Queensbury and we say, well, we're going to take a vote on that, I think the decision should be made by staff, because you are the most knowledgeable in this. And I really don't think that we should be going to our communities and asking people on streets, what do you think would work best? I think I have a lot of trust in our engineers, and I really feel that they know what is best, and that they should be implementing any devices that they feel on a stretch such as Queensbury, what they feel would work best to make it safest for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Olson.
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. I think I've talked about this before, but I like the addition and improvement that we did to Southwood with the traffic circle and the asphalt sidewalk away from the road path. And I think this is something that we need to include in the future on this street. I mean, I know it's going to take a lot of pipe to fill in that big, huge ditch that we have there, but I think we've got to look at this at some point in time and put a sidewalk in, because that Queensbury is a collector of all those subdivisions through there, and there should be a sidewalk right from the Lakeville Elementary School straight through to Legend Lane, just off of the Vincent Road. And that way there, we've got some sidewalks, in pieces along through there. But I think that we need to have an asphalt sidewalk put in there. And we're only delaying the inevitable, I think, by just piecemealing the work that we're doing through that area.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Before I go on to Councillor Miller, yes, Director of Engineering, Mr. Loge.
Councillor Olson, and you hit one key point, that the costs with storm sewering that we looked at it a few years ago, and it was in excess of $600,000. For that kind of money, we can do a lot of narrowings and look at alternatives. That rate of cost is even more expensive than what we've been putting in on Gondola Boulevard, just due to the storm sewer that we're looking at. So that's the main reason. So that's why we're more excited about the calmings that we're proposing this summer, because it will help us take advantage of a bad situation. And to build on what the Deputy Mayor had said about the incorporating into designs, that's ultimately the goal for us. Yes, there should be some level of traffic calming on Queensbury. Staff is agreeing with that. We want to make sure that it's something that it's not necessarily that the residents are voting on to approve, but we want to make sure that they have some buy-in. If we put something in there that don't agree with, or they have severe objections to, which is what we did here with some of the humps, then you'll get more buy-in with something that they will start having the consensus they like. And we think that this type of an approach is probably a little bit more reasonable. But ultimately, if we could afford it, storm sewer and sidewalks, we're young, but we're an older community. That retrofit is quite expensive, and that's our main consideration at this stage, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Loge. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Loge. I'm super happy that these would be permanent. I do have a couple of questions and concerns though. So if we do have quote unquote a flower pot, if it's close to the middle of the road, which I'm assuming it will be, we get into the winter months, that road's not very wide to start with. It's wider than Princeton, but it's not that wide. We have snowbank issues, and we have a ditch that drops down deeply. And when we have water flowing in there, it's super bad. So I also know that historically we don't like to do 4-way stops or 3-way stops, but I travel a lot too. I go to Montreal, I go to Toronto, I go to Calgary. I used to travel a lot for work. It's not that uncommon to have stop signs through, especially school zones, where you stop almost every block. So the part we're looking at, not only is there a significant slope when you're going down Queensbury that you'll go more than 40 most of the time, it's also a walking zone to an elementary school. We also have a new subdivision, or not new, that was approved years ago, that's coming back to PAC that adds 39 houses, which will add more water and flooding, which you're going to have more talk about. We've already spent, I think, $100,000 putting rocks down in Queensbury to make those ditches work. So we may end up looking at having to fill those ditches in and putting the sidewalk like Councillor Wilson was talking about. Things have changed a lot. We do need some permanent things. I do believe that an option should still be a stop all the way through there if we can't get to the other one. So I'm glad it's permanent. Unfortunately, we don't have any pictures or things to show us what these things would look like. I am happy that, after this year, we're going to finalize this and finish this one way and for all. But I still think stop signs are still an option if we have to. Stop signs are going to cost us $2,000 or whatever to put in. We've got, if that PAC approves it, it comes back to council to approve the Queen subdivision up here. You're going to add 39 more houses in there. You're going to have another road attaching by Kingsley, sorry. There's a lot of things going on here, and it is a walking zone. And I do think the town, as the Director of Engineering has stated, the people there do need to have some say in this. We can't just arbitrarily go and change things all the time. This has been going on for a while. We've tried different things. I still like the photo radar. I don't know what we got to do to get that going, but that would stop a lot of things. But those are my comments. I'm glad we're going to do something this summer. I want it sooner than later, and I'd like to have this done in November and finalize what 2021 would be. But I do think that we, as Councillor Olson talked about, we may have to look at eventually filling those ditches, not just for this speeding issue, but for the constant flooding and complaints we get down that, especially end of Queensbury, that we're going to continue to get. And if you haven't seen some of the letters yet, if you go to Facebook, there's a little bit of a pushback right now to PAC about the Queensbury subdivision that's going on too. So those are just my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Again, I can't see everybody. Is there anybody else that wanted to have any questions or comments? Okay, we have a resolution here. Basically, if anybody wants to make that resolution.
Move to receive and file Councillor Miller's comments.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Luck.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Hara on the question. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Correspondence, item 9. There's nothing. Item 10, bylaws. Nothing this evening. Item 11, new business, 11A.
award of tender number 2020TQ 03-10-2020 or 2020 Street Capital Program.
Thank you, Ms. McGinnis.
You
We
would-
have here Councillor Luck, is that you? No,
Was myself, Your Worship.
Oh.
Thank you.
Councillor Rio, go ahead then.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I was looking at the bid prices, and the NRB Construction Company, who I'm not really familiar with, has quite a low bid. And the other thing that I noticed, I think from Mr. Loge and some other comments down below, he was talking about the rate for the asphalt is probably the best it's been in many years, and it would allow us maybe to put a couple of extra streets on with the savings. And then just a quick observation, Your Worship, with the price of oil, if they're giving oil away now, it might even go lower, but that's another comment. But I just wondered if Mr. Loge could comment on the discrepancy between the low bid seems to be quite a bit significant lower than the others. And I don't know whether this company is a newer company. So two questions, comment on the bid and comment on the quality of the company itself. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rio. I will now turn it over to Director of Engineering and Works, Mr. Loge. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. NRB used to be Lafarge, so they're quite a well-known company in the community. We've used them before. They are all four of the bidders actually are very good asphalt companies in the town that we've used before. So I have no issues with any of the companies that would come in to do the work. Frankly, the reason that you see the outlier of the four Classic Construction is they actually picked up the City of St. John tender a week before us, which was a $2 million and some contract, I believe, if not a little bit more, and they received that. So Rosse was put their tender out just the week before us as well. Galbraith Construction picked up that tender. So basically, as the jobs get put out to bid, these $1 million jobs, the asphalt companies, once they get a big job, they're not as desperate to find more work, so their unit price goes up. So for example, Classic Construction, I think they bid the city job at $81 a ton. When they came to us, they were at $100 a ton. So because they already had a job in their pocket. NRB had missed out on the city contract. I think they were second place on the Ross State contract. So we knew between them and Dudley's, they hadn't received contracts yet. They were coming after ours hard. And so that's one of the strategies that we find to our advantage. If we are not first out of the gates, but if we're second or third, we generally get advantage of a reasonable price. The other thing is, and council has seen it in our presentations in the fall, we try to do groupings of streets. So you do a subdivision or you do 3 or 4 streets in a certain area. That reduces their mobilization costs. They know that they can get in and out of the community quickly. Credit to Krista and her staff. We are not a company that the town does not hold out. We're not waiting 60 days to pay invoices. We're paying them in 30 days. So they're getting their bills paid on time. We've got very good feedback on that side. So Quispamsis is actually a very community of choice for a lot of these bidders. That's why we're getting the reasonable price. So that's a comment on the price.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Loge.
Mr. Loge. Yeah.
Your Worship,
Yes, Councillor Olson.
thank you very much. Well, Mr. Loge has done his magic once again this year. The timing is right, and you should be complimented on that because it's working this year. I guess I've got this time of year, I'm always talking about paving more and doing more. We're showing $160,000 surplus. 160, I haven't got it right there in front of me, but 169, is it? Yeah, $169,000 surplus or money left in the budget. I think we should do more paving. at $73 on the ton. I think we should be adding more roads. Last year, at budget time, I think we moved to borrow, I think it was 500,000, I'm not quite sure, to add more paving. Here, we've got a great opportunity to add more work and save on the asphalt about 25% of normal. So I think that we should be taking advantage of that and do as much as we possibly can. With all due respect, saying that we're doing 7 roads is less than what we've done in previous years, even when we're doing 12 roads. And I know that each road has its own story, but I just think that we should be doing a lot more roads and spending as much money as we can on paving.
Thank you, Mr. Loge.
The thing to remember is, even though it's 7, there's some of these roads that are quite lengthy. Model Farm, Breddy Lake, so the distance is there, that's making up the unit costs. So the number of streets is not deciding. It's because some of these are longer than we've done before, so that's why we're seeing the same unit prices. I would caution with regards to the budget. We are sitting this, and as you can see in the recommendation, is to sit at the current recommendations, adding Jasper because it was in our original planned 2020 capital program. So we're bringing us back to where we thought we would be in the fall. If you recall, we knew we were going to come in with a few higher costs for gravels and things like that. The asphalt is just one component of it. The other thing that we're a little cautious is, and I know that the CAO fingers up, and I'm going to move it to her, but we're speaking about, the community, where we're at for the next 3 months and the costs of running the town for the next 3 months. This is monies that is actually, some of it's coming out of our operating, that's not just borrowing, that can go other areas. So as much as I love paving roads, I would urge a little bit of caution from a revenue and expenditure perspective. And I know the treasurer probably nod her head as well. And the other thing is that we really want to make sure that the streets that we have, we don't get surprised with the extras. And I'm not saying that we're going to spend $160,000 in extras, but last year we hit the Quispam Road, for example, and that was a mess for gravel, and we got surprised with that one. So I'm a little hesitant to recommend that we go whole hog on street paving at this stage. And the other thing is, I've got to credit my staff, Mark Morrison, Philip Arsenault, the engineering crew. They're the people that put the package together. I'm just a talking head here, so they do a lot of the road work for me.
Thank you,
Your worship,
Mr. Loge. I think Ms. DeVille has something she wants to add.
The Director of Engineering and Works really represented my concern. We've been spending a lot of time looking at the loss of revenue and the additional costs associated with COVID-19, and we don't know what the future holds for that yet. And we saw this as a potential area for us to hold in our back pocket as a possible reduction to our transfer from the operating fund to be able to fund a portion of this, to be able to offset some of those unexpected costs that we weren't expecting this year. Now, if we're not going to see continued and we get back to whatever normal is going to look like after this point, we could certainly reconsider it at that point. But I think it's a very early time for us to be looking at spending that money, because I think we need to be prepared for potentially more revenue loss or more costs that we're not anticipating at this point. And unfortunately, nobody's magic crystal ball for the future can tell us what that's going to look like. So I would caution, the same as the Director of Engineering and Works, that this may not be the time to make that decision. I think maybe as the summer progresses, it may be an opportunity for us to reevaluate, and if we don't need that money for something else, then maybe we could look at it at that point.
Thank you, Ms. DeVille. Councillor Olson, did you have something that you wanted to say back?
Well, I think everybody knows what my feelings are. If we want to delay further discussion on that to evaluate things in a couple of months or something like that, I just don't want to lose that opportunity if it becomes available. I thought that we had some discussions, and I thought that they sounded a little differently than what I'm interpreting right now. But I just want the money to be properly spent. I know that on the Quispamsis Road, that's you talk about big jobs and that's going to be 5-6 years before we finish that, and that's just one of the roads. So anyway, I'll wait until we reevaluate. But looking forward to the reevaluation.
Mr. Loge, just a question. When we look at this, when we talk about higher quantities and of roads and more roads and better value, I brought it up before, maybe on our garbage collection with Faro or whoever it is. Would we ever consider looking at talking to the town of Rothesay and finding out, what roads they have and maybe buying power with more roads, more miles on roads, and getting a better price? Just wanted your comment on that. I'm just thinking we could look at something like that.
Well, if you look at the Rothesay tender, they've got the slightly, I think just about the same as we do, a little bit more. Their asphalt came in at, ours is 73, I believe there's a $75 a ton for base asphalt. So we came in, we even got a little bit better price than they did. But what I'm looking at is scheduling. So now let's say you've got two companies serving this community in Rothesay, and they can actually do the work over the summertime. If you look at our summer programs, if they spread themselves too thin, then we have a project that may not get done as quickly as we want it. And that's one of the driving factors for us is that we've got a project size that we think is manageable from a cost, but it's also manageable from a time perspective. And I agree, yes, there is some advantages to buying in bulk or economies of scale. And we've had that discussion internally, even along the lines of saying to developers, for example, hey, we'll help accelerate your asphalt program. If you want to pave your street, you pay for it, and we'll incorporate it into our asphalt tender, and we get the benefit of potentially a lower price. But I think if we go beyond that size, if we double the size of our current project in two communities, then you've got one contractor serving two masters. That sometimes is a little challenging.
Thank you. I just think we always have to be cognizant of that and economy of scale with our neighboring community in looking at all of these things. So just thought I would ask that question. Councillor Luck, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just something in passing. I know it comes up sporadically through the years. I'm wondering if we have some sort of analysis of the different paving companies that we've been using over the years, and if there's a way to see if by chance, and I know there's no magic crystal ball on road repair and potholes, but it just seems over the years that everywhere in Atlantic Canada especially, and I know our seasons are changing, but asphalt doesn't seem to be working as well as it used to. And I don't know if it's just my anecdotal analysis, but it seems that wherever you go or whoever you're talking to, they just say that it's not being made the same. They're not spending as much time on it. I'm not sure what it is, but surely, as you mentioned earlier, with respect to our, not RFPs, but our new models for the future, is there a way that we can is there such a thing as speccing a better pavement? Because it seems there's roads that we've done that just, honestly, I don't know if you're as disappointed as some of us are, but to see potholes in them a year later just is really frustrating.
Director of Engineering.
That's a good point, Councillor Luck. We've managed like I said, Mark, the engineering manager, Mark Morrison, and his team with Philip and Les and Jeff downstairs. What we do is we look at the asphalt mix every year, and we work with industry standards to say, okay, what are we putting down on for road surface? What's the load? What are the vehicle loads? Things like that. And we're looking at improving our asphalt specifications on an industry-wide basis. You're correct in that it's a little bit more than an anecdotal, is that a lot of the road conditions are the base. The gravels and the dirt underneath it is what's actually creating a lot of the trouble. And we are hostage to what is the ground is underneath us. Ross Avenue, for example, in the city of Florida frost heaves, no magic asphalt is going to stop that. That's why we spent a lot of money on the Quispamsis Road. We could have just paved the Quispamsis Road last year, just a cap and seal, but we knew that we would just have the movement and the cracking that we did. So that's why we brought the gravels in. So that's what we're doing. We're analyzing every year. What did we do in this tender? And we've done it for the last 3 years. Is we've also included, there's a recommended practice. After 2 or 3 years, you come back and you crack seal some of the streets. So that preserves, so the water doesn't get into the surface. So there's a long-term maintenance that goes with it. The next item I think on the agenda is our asset management plan, a request, and we're specifically, that is what we'll be looking at, is a 10-year level of service program for our streets under our asset management plan. So your comments couldn't be more timely, Councillor Luck, is that is a way to manage what we're putting down on the ground.
Thank you, Mr. Loge. Does anybody have anything further?
I do, Your Worship. It's Kirk.
Okay, Councillor.
What I agree with Councillor Olson and Councillor Luck's comments there. We'll wait to see what's going to happen, but I have another question on whether there's going to be some savings or not, because this is a RFP for our regular streets, correct? This doesn't include the roundabout. So I guess my question is on the roundabout at Squires. I think the total budget is $1 million, give or take, or 900,000, with the province, I believe, paying 600,000. Do we think that that may come in a little bit lower than anticipated too? I know asphalt's only a small portion, but just a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Mr. Loge?
We just got word back from our design consultants that the province, DTI, has just given their final review of the preliminary designs, and the estimates based on DTI's comments, it's just $1 million, give or take. So it's trending right where we thought it would be. The biggest issue in that particular scenario, you're correct, Councillor Miller, is that it's not asphalt, it's actually earth moving. That's going to be the biggest cost. Building the circle, widening the road. The asphalt is a minor component. I think it's less than $150,000 on the whole thing, is that for asphalt when you get right down to it. So I would hesitate to say that we're going to looking at a savings, but if as I forget, Councillor Rios mentioned the price of asphalt stays low. There's no reason to not think that an aggressive bidder would not come after this if they didn't have a job and reflected in the at least a part of the project, a lower asphalt price. But again, it is earth moving. That's the roundabout cost that we're going to be dealing with.
Thank you, Mr. Loge. Anything further, Councillor Miller?
No, that's it. And like I said, I just follow up with Councillor Olson. I know we're wary about the budget right now for many different reasons. We're hoping to find some savings, which I know we're going to have a finance committee meeting here, or hopefully we'll have one in May to see what's happening. But I do like keeping that option there, that if it is feasible in the budget, not to expend any more, but we do know that what we're going to be talking about later is the 10-year plan, that we know we are behind in the asphalts. I mean, we already, in the roads, we've already seen that from a presentation last year, that if there's another street tandem that can be done at that time, then that's perfect. But again, we'll wait, as Director of Engineering said, we'll wait to see what happens. And I know Susan and Krista, our CAO and Treasurer have been monitoring this daily, and we know things change daily lately. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Not hearing anything else, from anybody else, we do have a recommendation here. If somebody would like to move that motion.
Move recommendation, Your Worship.
Councillor Rio, could you just read that recommendation, please?
Okay, thank you. It is recommended Council award tender 2020 TQ03-10 2020 street upgrading to the low bid from NRB Construction for the bid price of $939,333, exclusive of HST. In addition, the successful bidder is directed to include Jasper Drive in the proposed project as initially planned in the 2020 approved budget. Your Worship,
Just
That
before-
last sentence, I wonder if we want to delete that. That's to be discussed in the future, is it not, your worship?
No,
So the resolution recommendation is fine then, is it? As
Correct.
presented?
yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Ryu.
Second, your worship.
Seconded by Councillor Olson on the question.
Question.
Questions called for. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you, everyone. 11B.
Quispamsis Asset Management Plan Phase 2.
Okay, we have
Worship?
this here. Yes, Councillor Luck.
I move that council authorize staff to engage the services of our consultants, RV Anderson Associates Limited, RVA, to initiate the first project of our 2020 Phase 2 Asset Management Plan Program, the 10-year desired level of service, LOS AMP, for roads. Is further authorized that staff apply for FCM Municipal Asset Management Program funding once the program opens. Staff will be required to come back before council for the approval to have our consultants proceed with parts 2 and 3 once results of the FCM application. I'm sure there's more. Or no.
No. Thank you, Councillor Luck. It's been moved by Councillor Luck,
Second, your worship.
seconded by Councillor Thompson on the question. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Item 12, reports. Looking for a motion to receive and file reports.
Move we receive and file reports, your worship.
It's been moved by Councillor Olson,
Seconded, Deputy Mayor.
seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Hara.
On the question, your worship.
Yes, Councillor Miller, go ahead.
Just a small question. Is this updated with the right amount of licenses for the pets? I'm looking at the animal. I know now, like for myself, I bought 2 for the lifetime of my animals, but it shows that none have been renewed this year. It's just, I'm just looking at the actual data that was in the report. So I know we've had our offices closed since mid-March, but it just seems rare that nobody this year renewed a dog license.
Ms. DeVille?
I'd actually have to defer that to the Director of Engineering and Works.
Oh, okay. Yes. Mr. Loge, do you see that?
Yeah, that is one of the things, the licensing, as much as they do in the fall and after Christmas, the bulk of the renewals we see this time of year, people coming in with sewer payments, things like that. The animal control officer does not issue licenses through his report. It would come through the front counter. So he does not have that particular information accurate. So all he has is, what they may come through him. So we can do is we can check with the counting and give a proper reflection of what is done at the desk. But it is, you're correct, your worship, Councilman is correct, is that the last 2 months, this is when the bulk of the licenses will be coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything further under reports? Okay, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Business arising from committee. I do not believe there was anything. I'm now looking for a motion for adjournment, please.
Move to adjourn.
Second, your worship.
Moved by Councillor Luck, seconded by Councillor Thompson, was it?
Ryu, I think.
Okay, seconded
you.
by Councillor Ryu. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening and remain safe. Take care.